Yeah, we'll wait for James. James more if he wants to see any of this, he can see it in the video. But that's fine. You and James basically have a 4-week head start. Because as you're aware of the structure, aren't you? I'll have
same with last.
Exactly. So well, yeah, I'll go into before you start again. So yeah, there's going to be some doubling up, of course. You know. Anyhow, so for the building approval, because it's designed to be able to be clustered together, but have some students that do planning and building approval all in the one thing. For this first 4 weeks, there's actually nothing that has to be done for building approval, because we've got to wait for those doing both to get their project 1 planning approval done. That doesn't mean you sit around twiddling your thumbs, or you and James. There's plenty of stuff you can do to prepare and get sorted. So, and you can move your way through it. And as you know from the planning approval class you did before, everybody's all at different speeds anyway. It's just a bit of a thing of juggling it. And yeah, and we'll particularly the building approval, we'll be running it more like a workshop, working through lots of details of things. That's what we'll be doing. So yeah, split across exactly those same projects, residential project, multi-residential project, and commercial project. With building approval, there's far less consultations. There's just the one consultation for every project. So you're not meeting with client, you're not meeting with council, just meeting with building designer once. And that's basically just as a check, to check your details and go, is there anything missing? Is there anything that's been done incorrectly with that? And I think people, one thing you'll find is with the planning approval, you end up doing some of the building rules consent stuff within the planning approval. And the reason you do that is because, and you do that in practice as well, because you don't want to go designing something and and working through an idea, getting it through planning approval and finding that you have to change it for building rules consent. So, working through this thing, that's all fantastic, and then there's something in the NCC that says you can't do this, you have to change something, goes back to council, you want to avoid that. So you're thinking about building rules consent when you're doing planning approval to an extent anyway, with all the big stuff. With all the small stuff like, distance of power points away from hand basins, things like that, doesn't really matter for planning approval. There's some stuff that that doesn't matter. But yeah, you've got to have the right number of windows in there, for example, because that's something that's going to impact on the external of the building. What you'll also have to do, and that's something that you can be working on, what both of you will have to be working on, is have a good look at all the projects. We'll have a look at the procedure documents, see what you need to be working on for each, clarifying each. Now, obviously, with each of the building projects, you're not going through the whole gamut of everything you need to do if you were to send something to a private certifier. We're touching on some stuff in Project 1, touching on some stuff in Project 2, and Project 3. So, but what you have to do is you've also got to show that you can talk with external consultants. So we have our attendance day for all the external students to come in to do some things. At that attendance day, I'm going to line up that you get to meet with possibly a plumber, electrician, a builder, maybe a private certifier, maybe somebody who deals with other services. We'll see. I'm yet to line up who. I'll let you know who they'll be. But in the meantime, have a think about the questions you'll need to ask of various different professionals for doing these projects. Think, I need an answer to that. I need an answer to that, and start working on that list of things. Beyond that, things like council project requirements. That's going to be incredibly familiar to you. That's that task 1. you've done that in planning approval, there's really going to be very little difference. It's going to be recalling a lot of information. Still, have a look at the procedure document, see what it says. Well, have a look at that task description, see what it says, make sure everything matches across. But a lot of it's going to be recycling information. What that means for you is you'll work on task 1 for building approval the same time you work on task 1 for planning approval. Because you'll be getting the same information from the same sources. There might be some little bits. So in building approval, you've got to do temporary power and so on, whereas you don't have to do that in planning approval. There's some little differences between each of the tasks, but basically you'll do them all at the same time, and you'll recycle information in large part from last semester. Consultant reports, well, yeah, you'll be looking at reports. We'll be looking at the same consultant reports within planning approval as you do with building approval, anyhow, and that'll be a refresher for you. With the planning approval, you've got to be writing letters to the client for various different things. You do the same in building approval as well. That client contract, so you'll be recycling some stuff from semester 1. You'll be doing that, but you'll be writing other letters for planning approval, and the main thing is to get your templates for all these letters really good in that first project. So you're just changing names and addresses and things like that. So you'll be working on that client contract at the same time you're working on other letters, engagement with your client. So and peer checking. So in planning approval you do peer checking, and in building approval you do peer checking. Both those stages you're checking for completely different stuff. So look, you two may end up working together. We'll buddy people up, and that may change for different projects and things like that. We'll see who's at what stage, going at what speed, and pair you up. But you are going to be looking at each other's drawings, which you do have. I have to look over and see where you guys are at. I do try to avoid pairing up people that there's a great disparity between where they're at, because if I pair somebody up who's done no work and they've been quite slack, and I pair them up with somebody who's fantastic, you know what's going to happen. They're just going, oh, yeah, all that. But that sharing, that working together, that's the way it works. That's the way it works in industry. Nobody reinvents the wheel. It's all sort of gathering bits and pieces, all bowerbirds, putting together all your stuff. That's how it happens. That's how it's going to happen in this class to an extent as well. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to be producing everything yourself. But you're going to be going, oh yeah, they did that. They did that thing. That's a really good way of showing that. Or they included this thing. That's great. Yeah. And so you've got that one consultation with me. That consultation is far less formal than what they were in the planning approval. Planning approval, you've got a whole series of things that you have to cover within that consultation. You've got 10 minutes. It's like, oh, you've got to ask this and 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 this. And if you don't, then you've got to send an email to say, hey, I need clarification on these things. So you've got to be far more formulaic about doing your consults in the planning approval, because it's all about gathering that information. This is more about the designer checking over your stuff and going, yes, you've done that adequately. No, you haven't done that adequately. This needs work. This doesn't need work. But that's going to happen through the classes anyhow. We'll be talking about wet area details and timber framing details and all this sort of stuff in here, working through all of that. And by the time we get to that, I hope there won't be too much left to be talking about. Anyhow, and then you do council submission. Another thing in the building rules consent bit is that within this subject it says that you have to make changes. So you'll send them off to council, and they'll bounce back. And the council will say, you've done this wrong or you haven't included this. I have to find something that you've done wrong.
Or add something.
What's that?
Or add something.
Yeah, or add something. Sometimes, yes, and
is that so we can do the revision sheets?
Yes, yeah. So you've got to go through that process. Yes, what I've done, and I'll do it again this semester, is there are a couple of things I won't tell you. Or there'll be one, typically there's one thing I won't tell you. Some cheeky students, know what, they know enough about what's going on, they include that bit. I was like, oh, I have to come up with something else. But I have to find another problem, but that's what happens, right? So stuff will bounce back from council. You have to make those changes. You have to use revision clouds and revision schedule and so on for that. And then, yeah, and that's the process that it follows.
And the same goes for all the projects, really, almost the same process.
Yes, same process for everything. So, yep. So your planning approval flows through a process, and you've got your 12 steps in that. With this one, you've got like about 6 or 7 steps in there. Each project has exactly the same process, but different details.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll go into now. Been through that planning approval. Yeah, so all of my students for the external of this have done planning approval previously. So I don't have any externals that have been planning and building approval, so I can keep these sessions relatively well condensed. I don't need to be recording much. So have a look at project 1. Building approval. So the procedure document's got to be your guide as to how you work through it. I say, and I say no. Oh, could be a little bit larger. No, doesn't want to.
Just control and scroll wheel.
Control scroll wheel. Oh yeah. Cool. Right. Yeah. So as we discussed, planning approval. Remember, maintain your activity log. Maintain your activity log. Yeah. Yeah. So we've got that same project, number 174, Shepherds Hill Road, Bellevue Heights. Develop models to meet requirements of soil report, footings report, bracing report, energy efficiency report, fire zone report, sun paths, termite pest management. So, yeah, you've got to be looking at those. You've got to be including all the details in your drawings. So you've got that footings report from the engineer that says this is what size beams at what location, and then you've got your little table saying like 2 N12s at whatever. You're going to have to draw a whole lot of sections and section details and actually interpret that information into a drawn content. So you're doing your cross section through your slab, you're drawing your bars at 12 millimeters and at adequate spacings and adequate depths with correct concrete coverage. Bracing report. So there's a whole bunch of information that's given to you in regards to that bracing. Now it's not typically not typically accepted that drafters should be designing bracing, but that is something I've done a lot of myself, and I can take you through that process to get a much better understanding of really what bracing is. So yes, it's about you being fed that information for somebody and getting that into the drawings, but that's something I can share with you a little bit more in depth about understanding bracing and how that works. Do either of you have a bit of an understanding of that already?
Timber framing.
Framing?
Like we can brace a timber house.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what my experience is anyhow. So Yeah, so probably you guys are fairly well, but we'll go into all that. It's not a great deal you've got to do in regards to energy efficiency report. Fire zone report. So in planning approval, you have to put together this summary of what you've done in regards to meeting the bushfire attack level of that site. Now it's about getting some of those notes onto drawings. So saying this is what we've done in accordance with this. This is why, etc. And having all those notes to say this is what this is how we've approached that. To get all those details on the drawing, and have the drawings drawn correctly to meet those fire requirements, but also get your notes on there. And termite and pest management, once again, that's about notes and specifying, deciding on various solutions. So cover sheet schedule. So yeah, so for you this is all very similar, and much of this is going to be, you recycle a lot from the planning approval. You're doing both at the same time. You read both documents. Correct. Just what I've found best for students doing both is if they do their plans basically to building rules consent standard. So you're meeting all the stuff that it says in the planning approval thing, but if you can be reading this at the same time, putting all your notes and everything on there, well then that's great. Do the whole thing.
Yeah, you'll be easier.
Yeah. It's efficient, and that's what it's all about. So this is what you have to do in planning approval anyhow. So there's site plan, floor plan, 4 elevations, 2 sections, north, south through wet areas, and then east, west through veranda and window. But because you're taking those sections through there, you then have to do details of sections, and so that's where you use your detail lines, and what you'll end up doing with the Revit model that you're given when you drop a section through there, it gives you basically nothing anyhow. You have to come up with all this stuff, and so you draw all of these details in detail lines. So wet area including floor gradients through the floor trap as a 1:10 ratio. If it works better on your page to do a 1:5 for certain aspects, it's fine. Do 1:5. I'm fine with that as well. Doing any of these details 1:20, that's not really going to show me enough. So we're looking at 1:10, possibly 1:5. So for you, we're going to have to go through a lot more of the wet area stuff. I'll go through it at the same time, but because they touch on wet area stuff in the planning approval a little bit later on, we're going to have to get that a little bit early for you, going through that. So you're going to have to draw your floors at the correct gradient, but also because my eye isn't going to tell me. I'm not going to go, oh, that's 1:75, not 1:60. Well, I can't pick it, right? You're actually going to have to notate that as well. So draw it in at the correct ratio, correct slope. Do you know why you should draw it in at the correct slope? Even if your eye can't really pick it?
The slopes are, or your designs are to scale.
Yeah. It's your opportunity to pick up any issues with the building. So if you just go, oh yeah, standard 50mm set down for wet areas, and you've got a wet area which is a bit larger, sort of like 3 meters wide or something like that, if you do, and then you go, oh, well, you want to have an open shower, so it's going to be 1:60 slope for that first 1500 and 1:80 after that, you've got to find out that you don't actually have enough set down within your bathroom to create that slope, because what you do is you set down the concrete and then you do a cementitious screed over the top, sloped in. So the drawing process is also your opportunity to make mistakes before anybody cuts any timber or pours any concrete. So that's why you should always be drawing everything to scale and putting in all those correct slopes and things, because it will bring up issues before they're actually issues. So do that. you've got to do a section through the eaves, so a standard eaves detail. I'll accept several different approaches to this. You can decide to box your eave. But if you look at that Revit model, it's got raked eaves, whereas so you stand under the eaves, they're at a slope like this. But if you want to specify it as a boxed eave, where you're tying your rafter or truss back into your frame, and you've got a level lining underneath, that's also fine. So several ways to skin a cat. I want to see that you understand what you're talking about when you're doing eaves details, and probably the boxed eave is going to be a little bit simpler for you to do. Technically, for that, because it's specified as a truss roof, unless the truss manufacturer says you should be doing it, you don't really want to be tying it back in, so you can use little notch on the back of your fascia and a quarter round on your wall to hang your eaves lining to box it out as well. Yeah. Work through several of those details and specify that. We'll have a look at those, and then there's that footing detail. So 1 to 10. So that's your section through the footing. Be aware that this is a framing cladding house. It's not a brick veneer. So brick veneer will have a set down for our brickwork of 86 millimetres for your brick and first level mortar. For this, we're not going to have a set down. So have a think about your footings details, interpreting that information and getting into those details, and then veranda connections. This is where there's several ways to do it. So I'll talk about probably probably the best way of doing it. But there are several ways to do it. What you've got to be thinking about is, once again, it's got to be clad with that James Hardie prime line. If you're going to have a piece of timber on the front of your building, the pitching plate that your veranda comes off of, you want to make sure that interacts well with that James Hardie prime line. That's probably a neat, if you can have that, so your weatherboard comes to the base of that piece of timber, that's going to be a nicer detail than if you've got your rafters punching through that cladding and having cutouts for it. So think about what looks nice, what's got to be a good detail, but we'll get into more the technicalities of it. But both of you done timber framing already? Great. So that's cool. So that really lightens the load for me in terms of telling you about sizing up those rafters and things like that. You guys will be able to do that yourself. So yeah, look, I think you could probably really jump ahead and start mucking around with a lot of this stuff, actually, and then treat me more like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of time lost if you're doing these details, and then I make some changes and things like that. And I'm picking up that you probably know a lot of this as well. And so so I think this afternoon class is going to be pretty light on, really. So while you go through the planning approval, think about all these details as well. Just produce both plans.
To maximize the time. Doing both at the same time will be better.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Do everything all on the one plan set. So that plan set is ready for building rules consent. So you're going to have to do a bracing plan. Now, so you would have touched on bracing for timber framing, but do you know how it's shown in a plan sense? You do?
Yeah. We had to apply the bracing to the plan, but that was only in the sense of showing it on a specific bracing plan. That wasn't showing it in. Yeah. So we'll get you to go over it again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll definitely go through it. The way I've always done it is I've done my timber framing plan, and then I put my bracing on the timber framing plan. I don't have a separate plan for bracing or timber framing, because timber framing plan is not very busy anyhow. Sometimes if there's need, and I do typically do it, is you, on your timber framing plan, you set out all your studs, where all your studs are going. Particularly if it's a framing cladding place, you've got to be thinking about where you're fixing to those studs. Brick veneer, it's not really so important, but you can set out your studs on your timber framing plan. But then beyond that, all you're doing is drawing in thick lines for your lintels and specifying lintels, and then specifying bracing. So it's not a really busy plan. You've got rid of all your kitchen cupboards, everything like that. It's just the bare bones of the timber in there. And so I tend to put bracing on that timber framing plan. And for your sheet bracing, it's just a thick line, like a 0.5, something like that. There's just a straight line offset from building to about 50 millimeters or so. And for strap bracing, use an X for double strap bracing, and just a single diagonal line for single strap bracing. And for type D bracing, which has tie downs on the top and bottom chords, you draw it as an X with the ends joined together. But look, it sounds like this class is going to be pretty simple and straightforward. Yeah. We'll be working through it, and then sustainability sheet annotated with supporting clause requirements from NCC Australian standards and legislations, shadow sun path, dual window schedule, any additional requirements set up by local council. That's going to be straight from planning approval. You've done that stuff in planning approval. You'll be developing it in planning approval. It's the same thing. And then complete required application forms, copy of council requirements from website. One thing I didn't mention this morning with planning approval, you already know this, is that this unit is written as it's a national thing, and they say that you have to fill out forms. I have to see observe that you filled out all these application forms. South Australia has basically done away with application forms. So yeah, they're all online, and it's all just a thing. And that's going to, and next year when we get all these changes, that's going to be different once again. I've got the PDFs of all the forms, give them to them, and you fill them out. Things are changing faster than trading patterns. That's all it's going to be like. And then copy of council requirements from website. So you're told to find various different things on the council website. Some general construction information. I'm thinking that this should be fairly, will make fair sense to both of you. So we've got footings, see footings plan attached. External walls, 90 by 45 MGP 10 timber. So you guys makes plenty of sense. And then internal walls, 90 35s. Typically what's done now is you do 90 35s for your external walls. And 90 35s for internals, but then your top and bottom plates might be 90 45s. Typically don't use that much 90 45 anymore. And the reason for that is it's so much cheaper. 35mm thick timber is much cheaper than 45mm thick timber. So don't use this so much, specifically as a guide. That's what I'm saying. So rebate, so there's no rebate on this slab. Ground level, 150 below finished floor level. So if you draw that, you draw your section through the slab, you'll have your ground level at 150 millimeters below the edge of your, or the top of your slab, and your cladding will lap over that just a little bit. You need at least 100 millimeters of clearance between that natural ground level and the underside of your cladding to meet the termite requirements. Then once you've got paving in there, 75 millimeters below. If you do that, then it acts as a visual barrier. Then all you have to worry about is wherever you've got pipes coming through the slab, because the slab shrinks away from those pipes. When it's cast and it starts curing and drying out, it just shrinks away from those pipes a little bit. There's a little bit of movement in there. Termites can crawl up the outside of those pipes and gain access to your building. Not typical, but if you've already got your termite protection via your slab edge distance. All you need to do is a little bit of termi mesh around each of the penetrations into the slab. So that makes that termite stuff really simple for you. To meet the NCC on this, it really can be just a couple of notes. You can go further into it if you wish, but the minimum requirements are fairly easy to meet that. On that, looking through the NCC, you'll see that some buildings don't require termite protection at all. You only have to protect a building from termites if the primary building elements are food for termites. They're going to be edible by termites. So legally, if you've got a steel frame house, then you don't need to go through that process of doing termite management. That's legally. Sort of morally, you probably should anyhow. Because it's not just the primary building elements that termites eat. So the NCC, that's concerned more about safety. They don't want buildings falling down. But you've still got timber architraves in your house. You've still got a grand, or you might have a grand piano. You might have, other timber things. Yeah, morally you should. You've got a floor to ceiling of 2430. It's a bit of an odd one. I'm not sure why, but probably because it's a truss roof. They'll be battening out on the underside of the trusses for their internal linings, bringing that down to 2400. 2400 is a very standard height for, well, it's low, but the reason you'd go 2400 high ceilings is because that's two 1200 sheets of plasterboard on top of each other. And you can, you go 3 metre ceilings, which is two 1200 sheets plus half a 1200 sheet, or you go 2700, which is two 1350 sheets, one on top of each other. So yeah, floor to ceiling at 2430. You got to do your notations around what insulation you've got in there. So this one here, so this one has an eaves trimmer. So it's a bit odd. We've got trusses and an eaves trimmer. Do the details as you wish. Really, take some of this. We'll work through those. But we've got fibre cement sheet lining, and we've got a metal fascia. Do either a metal fascia if you wish, or a timber fascia. Either way.
I mean, you won't see it on the plans that you look at. You can see it anyway, unless we specify.
Oh no, you're going to be doing details. Yeah,
and but we'd have to put a line saying it's metal fascia. Otherwise, it's just a fascia. It wouldn't specify whether it was metal or wood.
No. But when it comes to you doing details of your eaves, like when you're chopping through that, use this as a guide as to what you're including in those details. This is the building that we're building. But what I'm saying is that here it says you're doing a metal fascia. You don't have to do a metal fascia. If you want to do just a timber fascia, 180 by 32 timber fascia with a little groove cut in it, that's also fine for me. I'll let you muck around with this a little bit. So we got a 19 by 19 eaves mould as well to carry that eaves sheeting. There we go, ceiling battens, so 70 by 35 ceiling battens, so they'll be at 600 centimetres across on the underside of your of the bottom chords. You don't have to specify lintels, don't have to go through to the frame, don't do that, that's fine. Yeah, so here's your details there. I think all of this has got to make a fair bit of sense to you. But that's where you get a lot of your idea about, if you're drawing a detail, you go, oh, what size is that? What size is that cornice? Go back to here, you go, oh yes, 55mm cove cornice. And does everybody know what a cove cornice is? No. It's that semicircular cornice, so it's not, don't have a, should have brought a pen with me.
So
For this
you have
bit.
that's up your ceiling and doors. On the inside at the top of the ceiling, between your ceiling and your wall, you have a
So
A little, yeah, a little moulding, yeah,
Ah, okay.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
wrong.
yeah. So that's a cornice, and you've got all sorts of different types of cornices, but
There'll be models on the Revit. And I think if you've done Revit Intermediate,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
would have already used them.
Yeah, there's one over there.
yeah, but that's like it's a quarter of a circle basically.
Mhm.
That's the most common one. So this is a cheap build, like 55mm cornices is a cheap build. So you're going to have to be doing those details, but then you're also going to have to think about other things. So you're asked to do these things. In a drawing sense, I'm not expecting you to go any further. I'm not expecting you to, what else could we do? There's a few things we could do, but I'm not expecting you to do anything more in terms of drawings. You have to do those sections, those details. That's it. You interpret all the information you've been given, and you gather some details. You look at other details from other sources, and you work those out, and we discuss those. I'm not expecting any more drawing than that, but what you can do is develop your general notes. So think about general notes for this residential building, and things we'd be speaking about in our general notes are, all timber framing as per AS 1684, and then you might make a note about unless otherwise specified, nominal fixings as per table, was it table 19, timber frame code? Yeah. So you want to say that's, all the timber framing is as per that. Then you'll say trusses as per manufacturer's specifications at 1200 centres or so. So you have some notes. Other things we want to write are footings as per engineer's details, and from those engineer's details, you might want to take some of the notes from that. So on that footings report, they've got. I think it says on that one that if footings are over more than 300 millimetres of fill, so if you're cutting land, you dump in that soil, you'd roll it with your excavator, it's not controlled fill. Controlled fill is when you bring in compactable rubble and you compact it at 150 mil layers with a compaction plate or something to a certain density, so the engineer's happy with it. That's compacted fill or controlled fill. Just your standard fill where you're digging it out of the ground, dumping it there and driving over it, that doesn't provide much support to the underside of the slab. So you have notes in there that say, for fill greater than 300 millimetres, you've got to thicken your floor slab to 130 millimetres and have SL72 on the bottom, etc. So you can get a whole bunch of notes. So they're standard sort of notes. You can include those notes on your drawings because you're drawing that cross section of that slab. Get those notes on there as well for people doing slab. That's framing, slab, termite management. So you want to have notes on there saying termite control as per AS 3660 in accordance with this section of the NCC. All primary building elements to be building with all timber primary elements, that sort of thing. So you'll be making those notes for termites. What else are we going to be doing general notes? Wet areas. So because you've got wet areas there, you're doing your wet area details. Not all of that can be covered by your details. You've got to be doing some general notes. So all all membranes as per AS 4858, I think, and all details as per AS 3740. So you'll be making reference to both of those, and then you'll also have some notes in relation to, so in AS 3740, you're probably familiar with it, we'll work through it more. You've got your different types of membranes, and so you have some notes about your type of membrane. just really quickly in a nutshell, we'll be using a class 3 membrane on this building. Class 3 membrane, that's a lot of flexibility. We've got concrete slab and timber frame. You're not going to use anything else apart from that class 3 membrane. So you're going to be putting general notes in there like that. Yeah. I'll probably have a good session on general notes and get a good list of these are the sort of things you'll be wanting to develop for your general notes. As the base minimum, you want to, like for all the drawing stuff you're doing, you want to provide detailed explanation of that and the NCC and Australian standard references for those things you're doing. But while we're here, we might as well make more comprehensive general notes rather than just meet the base requirements of the assessments. That's pretty much it for building approval. So we've looked at project 1. Well, what we can do is we can go through, have a look at project 2 and project 3, but I won't really dwell on them because they're coming. We'll take it step by step. So project 1 building, project 2 building. Procedure document for that. So, got to meet requirements of natural ventilation and natural lighting. So you're across all that already, so that's going to be easy. You'll get that into planning approval and building approval at the same time. Materials. So you're thinking about durable materials that are fire resistant to a certain standard because we're building on a boundary, all that sort of stuff. Don't want to give too much away. Demolition, how you make notes around all your demolition, and possibly some general notes around demolition that relate back to Safe Work and Safe Code of Practice for all demolition work as well. So you might be making some mention of those, and in class 10 garage, etc. So cover sheet, site planning, existing demolition plan, you've done that in planning approval, proposed floor plan, garage, floor elevations, 2 sections through wet area and through stairwell and lift. So so in project 2 you're doing a lift there. So what's that?
I'm just thinking about project 2.
Yeah. So you'll be adding a bit more detail. Yep. So relevant specific clauses relating to wet areas, wall linings, wall and floor, water resistance, waterproofing requirements, type, and heights. You don't so in project 1, you've just got to be doing that cross section through the floor with your gradients and your waterproof membrane and your puddle flange and things like that, showing all that. We're not really going into walls and things. But what we did in the office where I worked is we had wet area details just as a standard thing. So it was 3 pages of wet area details for every project. Boom, they go on there. Boom, because if you're covering all bases with something that's prepared earlier, it just speeds it up enormously. Redoing all this stuff takes a lot of time. If you're working through project 1 and you've got plenty of time, go through AS3740, produce yourself a really good set of wet area details and notes that meets the requirements of project 2 as well. You go, okay, there we go. So we're looking at looking at those wall linings, and then wall and floor water resistance, waterproofing requirements, type, and heights. Screed, gradient, and floor set down. You're doing that in project 1. Installation of puddle flange and tiling. Once again, project 1. So that's the same, just it's only the addition of the waterproof or the water resistant linings to sections. You're doing a cross section of stairs. You understand stairs and so on. Actually, you would have done it in compliance, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Stairs, yeah, slope relationships, rise and run,
Yeah.
etc. So it's just about going through that again. Obviously, with project 2, you've got a garage floor and you've got a first floor. You've got to have enough stairs in between that. You're not exceeding 18 stairs. In a run, you end up having a rise of your stairs. All you need to do is put those on there and then say, as per table, blah, 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 NCC, maximum rise run. And you put all your notes in there to say, these stairs comply with this thing. So it's because what you got to think about your audience. Your audience is your private certifier. They're going to be looking at these drawings and they want quick, easy answers. They want to go, oh yes, it meets that, meets that, meets that, meets that, meets that, great, meets that, right. That's, yeah, you don't want them going, going like, oh, I'm not sure if it meets this or not. Send it back to you. That's what we're trying to avoid. So, goings and rises, width of stairs. So in the NCC it says this is how wide your minimum width your stairs should be. Just make sure you meet minimums basically. So several ways of looking at buildings and design is, and what we're teaching here is how to meet the minimums, right? From there on, you can take it further with your discussion about your clients to produce something that's a better value. But yeah, meet the minimum width of stairs and the minimum height of railings. And one thing you don't know yet is that project 2, it's to be disabled compliant. So there are certain things with the railings you have to do to meet that disabled compliance as well. Cross-section of lift with compliant aspects to be clearly portrayed and supported by specific clauses from NCC. Regards lift type, width, height, lift clearance, button heights, door widths, and access. So as you know, much of that is given to you in that section, and you just got to fill in the gaps and put in the notes. One thing you might want to ask a consultant about on attendance day. So attendance day will probably be in week 5 or week 6. So we've really covered project 1 by then. So a lot of those details, the bracing, the eaves details, veranda detail, all that sort of stuff, we'll be working through that. But hopefully I'll have a plumber lined up for that that attendance day, and you can ask them about doing plumbing stacks, how we should be doing plumbing runs, and how we should be looking at all these things, where we should have inspection points, where we need to have overflow relief gullies, all these sort of things. We'll get into that further, but probably around plumbing is where you can ask stacks of good questions, because that's something that, as drafters and as the course says, is that you should know about services and be able to include services, but none of us can go out and do plumbing work. Well, we can do roof plumbing to an extent. You don't need certification for doing roof plumbing and stormwater, and there's some other plumbing stuff you can do without certification. But everything mains connected, everything that's waste involved with plumbing waste, we need to be registered plumbers for doing that work. We can't be expected to have a real intimate knowledge of it, and at the end of the day, we're not specifying that. We can say this is what we want to do, and the plumber goes, yeah, that's cool, I'll do it, right? But at the end of the day, we're not the ones that say, this is what is ultimately done. The plumbers are going to say what's done. But it's a really important thing to have at least a basic knowledge in. Because, look, not all plumbers think outside the square, and so often you do have to be thinking outside the square. Sometimes they have to be pushed, but also, yeah, and they're not. And yeah, in fact, my brother was just working with a plumber recently, and he's having the same thing. He's going like, this guy, like, all he was thinking about was just doing what the client said they wanted, rather than thinking of better solutions for the client. It's frustrating, but you'll get that. You'll get, and so so in terms of getting good results, it's really important to know this stuff. But also, you just have to make sure that stuff can actually fit as well. You can't go doing designs and you work through the design and you realise, oh, that doesn't fit. I don't know if anybody's noticed the hydrant stacks in front of the stairwell near the. You want to avoid that sort of stuff, where some things haven't been thought through early enough in the planning stages. Obviously, this is a building which was retrofit, change of use, all that sort of stuff. You get some interesting stuff happening. I don't want to bag the people who worked on this building, because they actually did a really good job, and they won many awards for doing so. It's great, but that's, by thinking about this stuff early, by understanding it, is how you avoid that sort of stuff. So we'll get to learn a bit about that plumbing, and what we need to do. Door and window schedule, natural ventilation plan. So can be added to door and window schedules. So you've got your door and window schedule saying this is what the size, and then just have a little column saying that is this percentage of the floor area. Once you do that, then it's really easy for the private certifier to say, yes, lighting meets 10% and ventilation meets 5% of that floor area. Easy. Beyond that, it's all fairly simple. Fill application forms, things like that. Seek feedback and make modifications requested within required time frame. So I'm going to tell you, you need to make these changes. That's all fine. And notify client when approval achieved, supply, submit full set of required plans and supporting documentation. So that's all fairly standard. And yeah,
I think for me it's a little too much information.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All right.
No,
Yeah.
you I don't want to hand his bag. If you want to continue with him, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
well, let's. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll
Because
try.
I'm studying like.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good point. Thanks for pulling us up on that. Yeah. And true. This is really early into the piece. So definitely, we'll start. Basically the main takeaway message for you is you do all the planning stuff, work on your building rules consent concurrently while you're doing it. Work through all three things like that, and I'll help you out with some of those things.
Okay.
So for you, focus on the planning approval stuff for now, and then beyond that, in terms of our process, because planning approvals pretty sort of lecture heavy right at the start, and we're focusing on your sources of information, etc. We really can't get much into the building approval stuff.
No.
I want to be running you guys at the same speed, so I think.
Yeah, I'll just go home today and we'll come in. I'll come in with James and we'll sort of start over and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the way to do it. So for those first few weeks, muck around with stuff yourself, and then we'll start getting into things.
Yep.
Once Cleve's ready, you're at that right point. Because I'll probably end up doing it a little bit early for you rather than that 4 or 5 weeks. We might
Okay.
we'll see how we go.
Okay.
And I'll be in touch with you guys, let you know.
All right.
Yeah. Because I imagine you'd still want to start a bit early, wouldn't you? Get your teeth into it a bit.
Not fast.
Was
At
that-
this point, I'm still in holiday mode. I'm just like, when I get these emails from the other courses, I'll be finding out how much work I've got to do for them, and then I'll either be like, I've got a lot of work to do, let's get started, or I'll be like,
Right, so we'll be in touch, and we'll basically be so it'll be about how you're progressing, also about Pooja, like when I get to see her, how that's
Okay.
how you're going to progress. So that's I'd say that's really it for.
Okay. I'm sorry, but Pooja was going way too
No.
far.
Thank you for interrupting. Yeah, look, I just get talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll stop it at that.
Sorry, I had to tell you he was going to.